Welcome to the Purpose Pursuit podcast with me, Hannah Miller. Hello, Miller. With me, Hannah Miller.
And me, Laura McClellan.
Hello.
Hello.
I feel like you're becoming a more permanent fixture here.
Well, only if you'll have me.
Yeah, I want to have you. Right, we're talking today, recording, but this episode of the podcast is going to be the day before the book is on
It's
release.
A big day.
Yeah.
A really big day.
If it was that day, what might I be doing? But this is when it's going to come out, so we need to imagine.
Yeah.
Day before.
Yeah.
Heebie-jeebies. What do you do the night before a big event?
Have a panic attack, probably.
Right. Do you sleep well?
No.
No.
I'm probably not the right person to ask.
No, you're probably not. What am I going to do? Will I be kidding myself that nothing's really happening?
I think it's going to feel really surreal. You're going to feel like it's happening to somebody else, not you.
Yeah.
You'll have lots of emotions. It will be a sense of relief, probably, that it's
totally.
out.
Because this is the whole funny thing. It's like when you're waiting for a baby to come, it's this whole weird waiting. Is it really ever going to happen?
Yeah.
Some people whose babies go overdue, people start to think they're never actually going to have that child and become irrational. Is this book ever actually going to come out? But I do know one thing that I want to talk about, which is the whole thing about when you put yourself out there and the fear of rejection.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that, not just with regards to the book, although that is the reason, but one of my things that I think I'm going to feel, I'm going to potentially feel excited, but I think I'm also going to feel like I'm dreading it because it immediately moves into another space where people might say things or feel things and reject me. As in, what could happen? Nobody buys it. That's a form of rejection. People write nasty reviews or valid reviews that I think are harsh. I could get 1 star on Amazon from everybody in the world. If you're a family member, can you write me a review, please? That's not 1 star. I feel a bit like I am going to feel, not immediately because people have to have time to read it, but I am just standing naked in front of people.
Yeah. You have really put yourself out there. It's a really big thing. And you will end up feeling what do people think? And obviously, Hannah, people are going to love it.
Well, some people, but reality, not everybody is going to.
No, but that's not a reflection on you.
But this whole thing about rejection is the reality of anything where we put ourselves out there, isn't it? We fear rejection. We can fear it in big moments, am I going to get this job that I've applied for? Or it could be little things like, does this person want to have a coffee with me? And everything in between. Can you think of examples? I know for me, in my old job, partly because it didn't always feel psychologically safe, but also in my last job, if I got an email, Hannah, can we have a meeting? Genuinely, I always thought that meant I was going to be fired, I was going to be arrested or something on that level. It was never can we just chat about this project? No. I always thought it would be awful.
Yeah, assuming the worst.
And I don't even know whether I think as a person I assume the worst. I think I've got this thing that I could get rejected.
Yeah.
You had a thing.
Oh, yes. So I think it was a few years ago, and our colleague Zoe, she messaged me saying, can I talk to you on Monday? And at this point, it was Friday. So I literally felt like I was going to vomit.
It was going to be one of those deep and meaningful chats.
I've done something really bad. I've hurt her beyond, repair. I've done something terrible, but I was racking my brain. What have I done? I was so upset. So on Monday, I think you were in a few meetings, so you were in another room, and I just completely lost it. I started mopping the floor in here.
Did you?
I mopped the floor because I was freaking out that much.
I need you to freak out more often.
Stress cleaning. I don't know why.
I'm a bit of a stress cleaner, but not normally mopping other people's houses.
So shall I make a cup of tea? And then I started mopping. And
could she tell you were being weird?
Well, at that point, she said, Laura, can you come and sit down? And she asked me to be a bridesmaid. And I've never felt more
stupid. She didn't ask me, so I now feel rejection sensitivity.
Yeah, you should do.
I should.
So, it turns out she actually wanted to ask me
really
to be part of the most special day of her life. So I didn't need to worry at all, but I'd wasted 3 days feeling really sick about it. And you did get a nice mop floor out of it.
Love that. I know I'm a bit of a stress cleaner. Maybe I'll clean on the day that the book comes out.
do it if it makes you feel better.
It's a control thing, isn't it? It's something you can do,
and
control,
it's
satisfies, you've done something, it moves forward. I also am increasingly, I get rejection sensitivity around if people I know unfollow me on socials. I don't mean strangers. I'm actually okay about that. You might have a little, oh, okay, nobody likes me. But that doesn't really, like, stay. But I can feel like that if somebody stops following me on socials, because I'm left thinking, what have I done?
Yeah, especially if you feel things more deeply. You might be a more sensitive person.
I know,
that will feel big.
Wouldn't it be great to just shrug?
Never mind.
To be a person that just shrugs and goes, oh, well, and doesn't give it a second thought. I also feel nervous about opening Post at the moment because of the recent speeding fines, parking fines, that I'm now like, I'm going to get Post that's rejecting. It's because that makes me sound like I'm living in this state of like negative anticipation. But I do think we can. There is a whole thing apparently called rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is, I've written it down, heightened emotional response when we sense or even imagine disapproval. And if it's dysphoria, it's like an outsized emotional response to that rejection. But I think for me, sometimes I get this like anticipatory rejection because you know it could happen. And so every time, I guess in small ways, every time I've written a blog, every time we do the podcast, you're mixed with this feeling of this could be something that really resonates with people, or literally nobody likes it at all. And rarely do we engage with the in-between, which is reality, that some people will like it and some people won't look at it at all. And I think we try to be hopeful and think really good things are going to happen, but it's laced with this kind of fear of it probably won't work out.
Absolutely. And even more so when you really care about the thing you're doing. Yeah. And you'll feel things deeply because you want it to do well. You want to help people. You want it to resonate. Yeah. And so that's like an extra blow.
And I wanted to talk about it today because I think people might assume that when you get to the point where you're actually committing something to a book, that you don't feel like that anymore. And I think it's really important for people to hear that rejection sensitivity happens to lots of us in lots of different ways. It can come from all sorts of things. It doesn't mean we're really negative people, but we're sensitive to how we feel. And one of the things I wrote down in my notes was it's like, it is a bit like the other side of being a highly emotional person, or the darker side of being a people pleaser. And I mean people pleasing positively there. If you're somebody who wants to be liked and you care what people, you care deeply for people, you are going to care what they think. Yeah. So actually, perhaps what people think, even when they're not in my closest circle, because I care for people who are not in my closest circle, I'm going to feel more sensitivity in return. You know, like when a stranger, when you're driving, sticks their fingers up at you and things like that. Even that makes me feel a bit like,
I had that last week. I was shaking afterwards. And it wasn't even my fault. This time it actually wasn't my fault. It wasn't my fault. And it really shook me up.
Because you felt this is mean.
Yeah. And actually I felt really supported because it was a guy who basically came towards me on where I should have probably had right of way. Yeah. And I had to reverse like literally 1,000 miles behind to like make room. And he just went absolutely mental at me. And I was like, I just kind of smiled at him and said, bye. And then was absolutely shook up afterwards. But all the cars behind were like that to me. And like,
it wasn't your fault.
Well done. Yeah. But, it was horrible. I hate the thought of somebody not liking something I've done or thinking I love to do things right. And so the idea of doing something wrong, even if in that case I hadn't, of somebody being unhappy with something I've done, I hate it.
And we asked people on Instagram, like if they experience this, and loads of people said they can have this idea that they're called to a meeting, it's bad news, or they think their friends, whatever. So this is like quite global, that people have these experiences. And I don't actually think I'm an oversensitive person, in the sense that I think everyone's mean all the time and I'm really highly sensitive in that way. But there is something about when you put something out there, that you have put your heart and soul into anything you've created, there is a risk of the potential of rejection, which is kind of what I want to talk about today. And I know that is going to be part of my mix of emotions, knowing that the reality is, even if some people like it, some people won't. And the reality for anyone listening to this is that you will put things out there, you'll do things, you'll have ideas. Somebody actually said on Instagram, when they bring an idea to a meeting and nobody really catches on, that's a bit of rejection sensitivity, isn't it? Because it feels like, oh, that was rubbish, or nobody listened, or whatever the reasons were that happened. And I guess when you're feeling like this, the question is, for all of us, like, how does that hold us back? And how could this be robbing me of just the joy of this thing was completed? And I think some of it stems back to what we think are the measures of success that we're going to live by. And obviously, I'd like to sell some copies of the book. I can't pretend I wouldn't, because that would be a bit silly. Nice. It would be nice, wouldn't it? But if that is the only thing that this is riding on, then that's really out of my control to a certain level. I was on the other day, Goodreads, which I use for my own books and the things that I've been reading, just to keep notice. And Goodreads, if you don't use it, is essentially a bit of a social media app for reading. It's very, very basic, but it does pick up the friends that you've got, in life. And I saw that one of my friends had written down in their want to read pile, and my book came up, like, with a proper graphic and everything. And actually it made me feel a bit sick, because I suddenly realised people could use Goodreads to talk about it. Now, they probably won't, but they might. And I was then thinking, like, of course, you might get a 5-star from, like, your best friend or whatever. You might get a 3-star, which is, like, average and didn't move me. And I was thinking, is 1-star or 3-star better? What do you think? I mean, that sounds a bit silly, because 1-star means somebody hates it. But 3-star, is that just like...
3 stars is a little bit meh, isn't it?
Yeah. Didn't move you to even dislike it. Do you think it'd be better to have 1? Because I just think, you aren't the people I'm trying to...
But how can someone feel that extremely about a positive book about finding your purpose?
I don't know. People do. People feel extremely about lots of things. My dad feels extremely about Ant and Dec. As in, he can't understand why anyone would like them for some reason. Okay. I think he's the only person in the world that thinks that.
They're quite well loved, aren't they?
They are. Sorry, Ant and Dec.
I feel like your book...
They don't have to do with rejection sensitivity, because the whole world, except for my dad, loves them.
Who knows? Who knows? They might.
They might. But they have each other.
Yeah, that's true.
They have each other. That's totally off topic. Nothing to do with anything that we were talking about. But when I saw this Goodreads thing, I was suddenly hit with another whole thing that I'd not really considered, which is that space that people may say, don't bother reading this, or didn't enjoy it, did nothing for me. I listened to the audiobook and her voice is really annoying. All that kind of stuff.
I haven't even thought about that.
I know. I'm adding new
It's just
thoughts.
Putting yourself out there and being perceived. It's that whole thing of, oh my word, it is infinite the things people could say about me.
It is. But then why? Okay, yes, there is an obvious thing that when you write a book, you need some people to like it. Which, by the way, if we can just have a sidebar, we've got some lovely endorsements. I'm not going to read them now. But inside the front page, if you watch on YouTube, you can see me lifting it up. We have got some lovely things that people have said who were not paid to say them. I know some of these people, I don't know all of these people who have read it and commented. So somebody somewhere is going to like it. Dr. Pippa Grange, she said, this book helps you uncover what gives your life meaning. And that's a lovely thing to say.
That sounds quite good to me.
Yeah, that sounds quite good. Thank you, Dr. Pippa Grange. But as we come back to this, I guess I'm reflecting on, why do we give as much credit to strangers on the internet or anybody really to have the power to reject us?
As you're talking, I'm now remembering planning the wedding last year that I absolutely despised. I didn't want to plan a wedding and I didn't have
Not
much
because
fun.
you didn't want to get married.
Oh, no, I wanted the marriage part, but I didn't want the wedding.
Which, by the way, did turn out to be a lovely day and you were being dramatic.
I was being really, really dramatic, but...
For reasons.
But I was also being quite dramatic.
Yes.
But the thought, I experienced probably emotion that I probably haven't before and wasn't expecting to about the actual, like, wedding day and what people would think about it, which really surprised me. Opinions of, like, my dress, maybe, of the food, of the because we did a very small, it was like 50 people, just in a church, not just in church, but just in a church. No separate venue after. We had like a pizza van and a flatbread van and a little horse box with drinks.
It was gorgeous.
We just did a ceilidh. And so it was, and it finished at about 8:00. It was lovely. But I was so scared about how my literal family and friends who love me
were going to view the day,
because it was a bit different and it was it was just very low key. And I was really, really scared and getting het up and so worried about what would they think of the structure of the day? Would they be sat there thinking, this is absolute rubbish. What on earth is this day? Get me home. And actually that was a really new experience for me. And it took me by surprise, the emotions I was feeling and the nerves, not for the marriage or even my own thoughts about how I'd enjoy the day, but how other people would see it.
And it's weird because there are some people who their opinion is really valid, like professionals, their opinion matters if it's the profession that you are in. People who are your close family, who are for you, their opinions matter. So like if all my family said, Hannah, this chapter is not really very good, then I probably need to give that, or professionals whose opinions matter. Like we don't want to become like narcissistic, sociopathic people who don't want any feedback from anybody, unable to take it. But why do we sometimes give as much emotional weight or sort of feeling to what people say who maybe don't deserve that space? And I think that happens too. I had a friend who was saying to me that she's a professional speaker, she's a female, and she said that for many years that whenever she was in a speaking engagement, which is still quite a male-dominated space, particularly in the field that she's in, that she would often be looking in the room to the most powerful man in the room for their opinion on what she delivered, like unconsciously, subconsciously, essentially, until she realised she was doing it. And there is almost sometimes people who withhold praise are the ones we want the praise from the most. Their opinion then really matters to us. When they give us the scraps from the table and say that was really good, we're suddenly elated. And it's this strange thing about human nature that's where we're often wanting to get our praise from. And again, people might be listening to this and there might be individuals in your life that you've grown up with, or friends, or not necessarily safe friends or family members, where what they're thinking of you, you're giving it too much space, you're giving it too much weight. And actually these people don't deserve it in the way that other people's opinions are deserving of that space. And I think a question for myself in this is, how do I kind of mitigate for this by not seeing all opinions as equal? Now, if everybody who reads the book doesn't enjoy it, I have to take that feedback on board because that suggests something. Like if nobody watches a film and it's a flop, then something went wrong, right? Let's just be honest. Let's be honest. But if some people enjoy it and some people don't, and I fixate on those that don't, I'm going to completely lose the kind of joy of some of the difference it might make to other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think whether it's a book or it's anything else that is going on in your life, if you can stop and think about this and decide where are you going to put your time and space and energy, I think it's really, really helpful to do that. And I guess when we first decided talking about this as a book, there was the potential rejection of publishers.
Absolutely. I mean, they have that stat, don't they? Of was it even J.K. Rowling who had she had to do like
30,
something
30
like 30 agents and book publishing houses.
Rejection after rejection.
Yeah.
What if she'd have stopped and hadn't just sent it that one more time?
Well, I'd have no presents for my sister at birthdays or Christmas because she's obsessed.
The whole world would be without the joy of Hogwarts and Dumbledore and all the rest of it. And that could have easily happened because she was rejected so many times. And so there's like this fine balance, isn't there? That at what point does J.K. Rowling say, oh, nobody wants this, perhaps it's no good? On the flip side of, I just haven't found the right person yet. Yeah. And would Harry Potter have still been worth coming to print, even if it was nowhere near as popular as it was, and it had just given 10,000 children lots of joy? I mean, it happens to millions of people,
but that's where the metrics come in, doesn't it? Of actually, what do we measure our success by individually? What matters to us? What are our values? What does success look like? How can you reframe that?
Yeah. And I don't want to sit here and pretend, because it would be silly for me to do that it wouldn't be lovely to get some great feedback from people whose opinions within their field are substantiated. But if I am putting my eggs in that basket, I am leaving myself so open to rejection and finding it difficult. And that is quite different to somebody like that not enjoying the book, to a person who has read the book, a human being, and just thought this didn't resonate with me, and they have every right to that opinion, don't they?
Yeah.
They really do. I think one of the things that I would say to you if you're in this position or you're feeling a bit like I'm not going to do this because this might happen, I think it's a case of asking yourself if it's part of your purpose, which I felt this was, should you just do it anyway, like regardless of the things? Nobody who ends up doing something that ends up successful knows before they do it that it's going to be. Every person who auditions for something, every person who goes for a job, every person who writes a blog, every person who invents a product or makes a dinner for their whoever, you never know before you do it what's going to be on the receiving end. Nobody ever does, especially at the beginning. And I think if we all stopped because we were waiting for dead certs, there's so many things that wouldn't be out there in the world, so many conversations we wouldn't have. And what if you'd have just said no to Zoe and refused to have that conversation with her?
I'd never know.
You'd never
Would
know.
I have even gone to the wedding?
I know. You may have been cast out. And I think, I mean, that's a silly example because I'm sure Zoe would have just said to you, you're being ridiculous and I'm trying to say something nice. But there are so many things we could hold back on, like not going to go for that job in case I don't get it, not going to ask that girl out for a drink if you're listening, somebody here, there's a girl you've got an eye on, ask her, what's the worst that can happen? And that just reminds me of the TED Talk.
Yeah.
I watched the TED Talk, I heard about it years ago and I watched it years ago, but I've watched it again. I'm just looking at my notes because I wrote down their name. I think his name is Ji Zhang. And he's got a TED Talk which is called 100 Days of Rejection. Where's it gone? I wrote it down. 100 Days. Classic. These are my notes all over the place. It's definitely here. There it is. He wrote, it's called 100 Days of Rejection, his TED Talk. And he tells the story. It's so worth a watch. Just go Google it and find it. But it's so funny. He talks about when he's 6 years old and he's on the carpet, with his teacher. And the teacher was doing this really nice thing where she said, like, pick a person in the class and tell them what you like about them. And he was like the last person on the carpet and nobody had anything to say. And so the teacher had both like done this lovely thing that they thought they were, lifting all these children up, but actually he was left really rejected. And then he goes on to say about when he's 14 years old and he gets interested. I think he hears Bill Gates speak at something and suddenly he's inspired to get involved in the world of tech. And he says to his parents, he says, one day I'm going to be a tech company. I'm going to run a tech company and we're going to buy Microsoft. We're going to be so big, we're going to go Microsoft. So on one level, he's like this rejected child and then he has these delusions of grandeur that he's going to make this mega company that even Microsoft is smaller than. So he's really funny. Anyway, he goes on to talk about things haven't quite gone his way. As he's getting older and he's dealt with quite a bit of rejection. He didn't get the funding for a company and lots of things didn't go right. And he comes across this website called rejectiontherapy.com and he reads all about how you can learn to get better at rejection by simply putting yourself in positions where you're going to get rejected. Yeah. So we could argue, maybe, before I tell you his stories, you could argue that writing a blog every week, doing a podcast every week, where actually there are loads of people that don't listen, it doesn't go viral, don't comment on it, is practice at rejection. Yeah, absolutely. Ready to do something that feels a bit more permanent. Yeah. So he goes, when he started to do this, he said, right, I'm going to do 100 days. I think the website says go and do it for 30 days. Get yourself rejected for 30 days. And you've seen someone on Instagram who does this, don't you? Well, he tells the story of how on the first day, he goes up to a stranger and says, can I borrow $100 from you? And they say no. And in fact, they say no, why? And anyway, he's so embarrassed and rejected that he scuttles off. But remembers that this individual said why, but she didn't answer the question. Yeah. He ran off. But he got a thought from that, which was, well, actually, if I'd just stayed engaged, we might have had a different conversation. So he decided I'm going to be a bit more engaged. So day 2, he goes up to his favourite burger place and he says to them, can I have a burger refill? And they say, what's a burger refill? And he says, well, it's like a fizzy drink refill, but it's for burgers. With a burger. And they said, well, we don't do burger refills. And then he says to them, but I really like your burgers. And they say, oh, that's really lovely, but we don't offer them at the moment, but we will tell management. So he gets a no, but he stays engaged. He explains that he loves their burgers and that he'd love them to do burger refills. And then on day 3, he goes to Krispy Kreme and asks the chef to make him donuts that are going to look like the 5 Olympic rings. And totally expects them to say, don't be ridiculous, that's not what we do. And he says, I love your donuts and I love the Olympics, and I just wondered if it was something you could do for me. And the Krispy Kreme chef, bless her, says, I'm going to see what I can do. So she tries to make something that looks like him, presents him with this thing, and in the end he puts it on YouTube, and this video of him asking this question gets 5 million views. And he starts to realise that maybe the more we do rejection, the more we realise people don't always want to reject us. Maybe if we can tell them the why behind what we're doing, we can remove some of their doubt. And maybe we're being rejected because of reasons of doubt. And the whole thing's really funny, and it's definitely worth watching the whole long episode. And we'll perhaps put the link to it in the show notes, can't we? So people can go find it on TED. But this whole idea of perhaps the more we do rejection, maybe it gets easier.
Maybe it's a habit and
what
a
does
skill.
Is there a woman, did you say, on
Yeah,
Instagram?
I think she's called Soph Jones on Instagram.
Right.
And she just pops up all the time. And she's basically taken this on, and she just does really, really silly things. So she'll go into Tesco in a wedding dress with a Mohican wig on, and we'll just do her weekly shop, and she'll go and talk to people. And her whole thing is just that no one actually cares as much as you think.
Didn't think they did.
And actually people are much more happy to chat and connect and kind of laugh along than you think. And there's one that makes me feel sick to my stomach, where she goes up to these builders on a construction site, I'm pretty sure, gives them her phone and says, I'm just recording a video for my mom, can you just hold the phone for me? She starts singing, like, hi mom, I'm just going to sing a song for you, and she starts singing and dancing. It's like, it's absolutely horrendous.
Cringy.
But she's basically like flexing that muscle, I suppose, of rejection and people
and not being
laughing and
embarrassed.
opinion and not being embarrassed about stuff, which it's really, I think it's actually such a lovely idea.
And it does make me think, how often do we play it safe because we want to avoid an uncomfortable feeling? And why is it uncomfortable? Because we're taught that it's an identity thing when someone doesn't like it, or does it, maybe it's not, maybe it's just their opinion and it's not part of my identity at all. And I guess maybe as we prepare for tomorrow, when the book comes out, and in the coming weeks when we get feedback, maybe that uncomfortable feeling that that person didn't like it, that person didn't enjoy that person found that bit a bit twee or whatever, is just, it's uncomfortable because I haven't experienced it enough. And if I could just see it as well, this is somebody's opinion, it doesn't define me, they're entitled to it, they're entitled to absolutely not like it. Can I handle it a bit differently because of that?
So how do you think, what practices are you going to put in?
Yeah.
What like reminders are you going to tell yourself? We had a couple of comments on your story of how do you cope with it? Like what do you do?
Yeah. Well, one thing I read was that they say to make a decision about how often you're going to engage with that. So like for me, not just constantly looking at reviews. Yeah. So I already get reviewed, don't I, for the work I do. One of the things I do is I'm a speaker for a company, and I'm rated every single time I speak.
Very highly, may I add.
But I never look.
No, you never look.
I never look. I made the decision that if it was really bad, they'd make contact with me. And so I didn't look, to the point, actually, that I will just say this on here, that I recently won Speaker of the Year, which is partly based on getting the best feedback on my reviews.
It's such and you're the first woman. It's amazing. Yeah. It's absolutely
But
amazing.
I had no idea it was coming because I don't look at the reviews. No. And I think sometimes it's just as helpful not to keep looking at positive reviews, because then you're also getting all your identity and worth from that too. So it's about trying to hold both of these things a little bit lighter, because they're both a bit transient and they're both a bit fragile, aren't they? If I'm building all my security rather than rejection because it's got 5 stars, the same problem then comes if it's got 1 star. So I think that's one thing to do. I did write down some other thoughts around this. Where did they go? Again, I'm doing this again. What are some of the things you can do? I think to stay engaged is one of them. I think I wrote down, remember the why behind why you did something and reframe that why. The why wasn't that everybody loved it. That wasn't my why. My why was that some people would get helped. Yeah. That was my why. Naming it out loud as to what's going on. Ouch, this feels uncomfortable. Yeah. I would talk to you or talk to a friend or tell Sam, rather than shame, which makes you not want to tell anybody and just say, gosh, read this, what somebody said. There's a bit of a trend on Instagram, isn't it, at the moment, where when people get nasty comments, people are like posting them onto their stories to show what kind, almost like, let's just talk about this happening and make light of it rather than it darken our door and make us feel unworthy. I think for me, I've got to anchor my identity in other things. And I'd ask you that question, where can you anchor your identity outside of that stuff? Me being like obedient to what I felt was the right thing to do. For me, my faith is an anchor of my identity. My family and the people whose opinions are for me, even though they know I'm not perfect, that's more important to me. And I think we also have to let imperfection be part of the whole process. Like when you don't get a job, part of that, like to use that as an example, is you will eventually be redirected towards the right one. Yeah. As twee as it sounds, I've read that before about rejection being a route to redirection towards what you're meant to do. And I can think of so many examples of people where that looked awful. A friend of my son's who didn't get into the original uni she wanted to, it's ended up, the redirection for her has ended up so much better for her than she intended. And I think we can think of lots of those kind of stories from our own lives. Remembering the why behind why you did it, decide that, I think, beforehand. And then the other thing I thought was quite good is I saw this in... I'm going to interview Kate soon. Her name is Kate Murray-Youssef, and she wrote the ADHD Women's Wellbeing Toolkit. I'm going on her podcast to talk about strengths and personality, and she's going to come on ours as well. And in her book, she talks about this process of catch, challenge, change. So I thought I'd share this with you. So you need to catch when the rejection sensitivity is happening, spot when it's happening, identify anything that you might be feeling, what's going on in your body, pause to create some distance, especially if you're still feeling a bit reactive. So if it's making you feel something inside your body, just stop, catch it. That idea of catch it before the train, you know. Then she talks about challenge, get curious about how true these thoughts are, which I think is really good. Do you know the whole story? Have you jumped to conclusions or defaulted to an all or nothing thinking, which I think is really good because it's actually very rarely that black and white. And then the final one is change, create a more balanced perspective, such as I might enjoy seeing my friends in smaller groups, or it's okay that I'm not in a noisy restaurant with people I don't feel comfortable with. So actually turning it around and saying, actually, do I want the praise from that person who feels this way about the kind of work I'm trying to produce? I probably don't. They're probably not my niche, and that's okay. So what's the reframe? What does that look like? So catch it, challenge it, and then change and reframe is a tool that she talks about to reframe it, which I think is really good, really practical, and really useful. Just to finish, there's a quote that Brené Brown talks about a lot, and I just want to read it and she talks about, it's from Theodore Roosevelt, and it's called The Man in the Arena, or The Woman in the Arena. And this is about how we can feel sometimes when we step out in any way, and the person in the arena being the person that counts. So I'm just going to read it to finish, and then we're going to round up. Just to say, the book comes out tomorrow, and if you would like to buy it, if you'd like to purchase it, the links will be in the show notes, and you can find that there, or get in touch with us. Love to hear your stories of dealing with rejection sensitivity. We're all normal. It's normal to feel emotions around this stuff, but we can catch it, we can challenge it, and we can change. So let's leave with these thoughts from Theodore Roosevelt from 1910. It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat.